Hello everyone, I'm back with this week's chapter of Healing the Dark. This is chapter 22 by Anxious Astronaut 18. Same as last week, there's no mentions of self-harm within this chapter. However, I'm still going to read the author's trigger warning, because in case anyone is starting on chapter 22, they get the trigger warning for, what's going to happen throughout the whole series. So the trigger warning from the author is themes of self-harm, anxiety, and depression are expressed within this story. Trigger warning. Please do not read if these themes upset you. Trigger warning. Once again, there's no themes of self-harm within this specific chapter, but there are within the entire series, so that's why I read that. I think this is a very good chapter. Same as last one. I think they're all very good chapters. But I'm very used to having 2-minute long intros, and I haven't had an awful lot to say for the last few days, so I don't know. Let me just ramble. That's enough rambling. I've reached 1 minute of an intro. So I hope you guys enjoy chapter 22 of Healing the Dark, and on with the fanfiction, I guess. Nico's POV. Mrs. O'Leary was behind him. Nico had whistled to her, realizing that she was the way Percy could get into the Underworld, and she had reappeared behind him. Nico had listened to Percy go over what was happening on the phone. When he realized other demigods were on their way, Nico decided to seal off the entrance so that they wouldn't be able to enter. Dark spots started his vision, but he shook them off and made the descent into the underworld. Nico plodded down the narrow stairs, almost slipping a couple of times. He really needed to sleep. Although accustomed to the dark, he could barely see anything in front of him. He continued down the narrow steps until he finally heard the sound of the Styx. He emerged at the base of a cliff on black volcanic sand. To his right the river Styx gushed its toxic waters while the fires burned on the ramparts of Ebros to the left. Home, Nico thought drearily. Nico kicked up sand as he made his way towards his father's kingdom. He passed through the kingdom's gates without a problem, some spirits kneeling before him, recognizing he was the Ghost King. He disregarded them and continued through his father's realm. He saw Cerberus, who barked excitedly at the sight of Mrs. O'Leary. They began wrestling with each other, crushing some spirits. A ghost of a smile appeared on Nico's face at the sight of the hounds. He passed the dogs and through the security gates. The security ghouls acknowledged him as he walked through the fields of Asphodel. He walked, ignoring the lost souls wandering. He came upon his father's palace. Nico pushed open the doors to the entrance of the palace. As he walked through the entrance hall, he planned to just slip into the kitchen and eat, then go to his room and sleep for a couple hours. His plans were foiled when he tried to tiptoe past the throne room. His father's voice boomed out. "Nico!" Shist. He straightened and walked into the throne room. Hades was lounging in his throne. His father cleared his throat, and Nico kneeled. "Were you thinking about coming home without saying hello?" "Is there any reason you called me in here, father?" Nico asked, exasperated. Hades looked surprised at Nico's tone. "Yes. What was your motive for sealing off Orpheus's entrance?" Nico struggled to think of an excuse. "I was being chased by some rogue spirits and just barely escaped them." Nico knew the excuse was feeble, and apparently his father thought so too. He narrowed his eyes. "Rogue spirits? You've brought down titans and can't handle rogue spirits? The so-called Ghost King?" That struck a nerve for Nico. "No, sir. I overtaxed myself shadow traveling, so I didn't want to exhaust myself." "That's never stopped you before," his father pointed out. I Why not just use that one friendly hellhound that always plays with Cerberus, so you don't overexert yourself?" "I didn't think of that, sir." Nico looked down at his shoes. "And since you can't handle these pesky spirits, maybe I should just send a group of guards to take them out." Nico's eyes shot up in alarm. "No, father!" Nico couldn't risk his friends being attacked by underworld guards. If they were sent by his father, his friends wouldn't be able to hold them back. His father smiled coolly. "But why not? You said you can't handle them. I am happy to offer my services." "They weren't spirits." His father interrupted. "I know. I am god of the underworld. I see all that happens in my realm. Your deception shows that you were running from your friends and are ashamed. My question is why? Nico was at a loss for words. I'm waiting. I don't think that is any of your business, Nico stuttered out. Hades' eyes flashed. My realm, my son, my business. Tell me, what is happening? Why should I? Nico was too exhausted to care about the fact he was being rude. You've never been there for me, and just decide to now? I'm trying, Nico! Anger filled his voice, but the god quickly cooled himself down. If you aren't going to tell me, I'll find this information out on my own. Hades flicked his hand, and an orb appeared in the center of the room. A scene was playing on it, and Nico realized that it was his friends trying to break into the Underworld. Percy and Jason were pushing the rock. After a minute of struggling, Percy spoke. It's no use. I don't think we're going to be able to get down there. Could Hazel shadow travel down? The orb shifted to show Hazel, Reyna, Will, and Frank off to the side. Nico's heart jumped when he saw Will. He was leaning over Hazel, checking her pulse. Hazel was on the ground, her head in Frank's lap. Will looked up at Percy's words. She overexerted herself jumping here from Camp Jupiter. There's no telling when she will be conscious or ready to jump again. She can't go down there! Frank's eyes were bright with concern. She's supposed to avoid the Underworld, otherwise Pluto might take her back. Then there's nothing we can do, Jason muttered. Nico watched as Will stood up and straightened. He was talking under his breath. He walked over to the rock and, to everyone else's surprise, punched it. Nico winced as he heard the bones break and the loud gasp of his friends. God's damn it, Nico! Why did you have to run? Will breathed against the rock, fighting back tears. He went in for another punch, but Jason pulled him back. Nico stepped closer to the orb, unaware of what he was doing. Will. Will fought against Jason, but Jason managed to pin his arms down. After a minute, Will stopped resisting and collapsed onto the ground, kneeling. A sigh went through everyone, and Jason crouched down next to Will. He spoke in a low tone so only Will could hear. I'm sorry, Will. I know how much he means to you, but he will come back eventually. He just needs some time. Jason stood, his hands on Will's shoulder. I'm so sorry, but there isn't anything we can do right now. Jason walked away to round everyone back into the van. Will looked up right at Nico. Oh, Nico. He was about to say something else, but Nico had seen enough. He waved his hand through the scene, and the image was disturbed and cut off. He sneaked a glance at his father, who had just watched everything unfold. His hands were folded under his chin in concentration. He considered Nico. Why run from them? They seem to care about you a lot. Unless that Will character. You are ashamed of how you feel about him. Nico said nothing, which Hades took as an answer. Well, I can tell you that I had flings with men back in my day. Don't mention it to Persephone. But it really is nothing to be ashamed. Nico interrupted. Please don't. I really don't want to know about your past relations, Father, and I really do not wish to discuss this matter with you, so if you excuse me, I will be in my room, sir, he added as an afterthought. Hades might have realized he wasn't getting anything out of his son because he dismissed him. Do try and get some rest, Nico. We wouldn't want you to exhaust yourself. Thank you, Father. Is that all? Yes, you are excused. Nico pivoted and walked towards the exit. And Nico, believe me, you really have nothing to be ashamed. His voice was cut off by the loud thud of the doors closing. Nico melted into existence. He looked around to find himself in the middle of Coney Island. He stumbled as he pulled himself out of the shadow. The spirits had called to him again, and he looked at his hands. They were turning wispy. Will had been right. He was too weak to shadow travel. He closed his eyes and clenched his fist. He should worry about his form once he completed his mission. After sleeping for a couple of hours, Nico had awoken, eaten some food, and prepared himself to jump. The boardwalk was eerie at night, with no tourists in sight. It was quiet. He started along the boardwalk, looking for any evidence of Leo. Suddenly, an excited scream broke the silence of the night, as machinery started up again. Nico whipped around to see the ride called the Cyclone light up. He jogged over to the attraction and entered into the gates that had already been picked up. He walked through the lines and made it to the loading point of the ride. He took one look at the control panel and knew that Leo had messed with it. Listening to the excited screams issuing from the cart, he could hear Leo's voice, and a very feminine voice telling him he was being childish. He guessed that that was Calypso. He leaned back against the railing, crossing his arms as he waited for Leo and Calypso to return. He looked up as the track rattled and the carts pulled into the loading bay. Leo looked just as he did before he left. His eyes were sparkling with excitement, and his playful spirit shone through. Calypso, who was sitting next to him, had her arms crossed with an annoyed expression on her face, but Nico saw that her eyes were twinkling with joy. Neither of them noticed Nico as they came to a stop. Nico did tend to blend in with the shadows. The bar on their seat came up, and Leo jumped out of it. "Whoa! That was awesome! Would you care to go again, my fair lady?" Calypso rolled her eyes, but didn't argue. Leo took that as a yes and bounded over to the control panel. Nico decided to cut in. "Having fun?" It caused quite a reaction. Leo gasped, spinning around and pulling a hammer from his belt, and pointing it at Nico. Calypso jumped, and her eyes swiveled to where Nico was standing. "Leo, who is—" "Nico?" Leo broke out in a huge grin. "Aw, man, what are you doing here?" He went to go in for a hug, but then thought better of it. "Looking for you." Nico came off the railing and looked around. "You are not an easy person to find." Leo had helped Calypso out of the cart and put his hands on the back of his neck, looking sheepish. "I didn't know anyone was looking for me." "Leo, you've been gone a month. Everyone thinks you're dead." "A month?" Nico didn't say anything, so Leo went on. "But you didn't?" "I spoke with my father and found out you weren't," Nico said. "But you didn't tell anyone." "I didn't want to give them false hope. They have been in mourning." Leo smirked. "I knew they would miss me after all." Nico cut him off, anger rising inside him. "Leo, they think you are dead. Everyone is dealing with survivor's guilt because of you. You have been dawdling around the world while your friends are grieving for you. You can't keep letting them think you're dead. Jason lost his best friend. How do you think he's feeling? How dare you let them deal with that survivor's guilt?" Nico was breathing heavily with emotion. Although he personally had not been great friends with Leo before he disappeared, he saw how much it had hurt Jason and how much pain it had caused him. Leo was currently processing what Nico had said and was opening and closing his mouth like a fish. He looked shocked to hear Nico speak so passionately. He also looked guilty, which was what Nico was going for. He opened his mouth to speak, but Nico was on a roll. "Camp Half-Blood is your home. Those campers are your family. How dare you throw that all away? Now I expect to see you back at camp very soon, and if I don't, I'm going to make you wish Gaia was successful in killing you." Nico turned on his heel, leaving behind a very confused Leo and an equally befuddled Calypso. He walked to the wall and melted into the shadows. That was Healing the Dark, Chapter 22 by Anxious Astronaut 18. I hope I portrayed Leo's character well. I don't know, I kind of just did something slightly different, I believe. If you guys cannot tell, I'm sorry. I probably sound ridiculous at the moment. But anyway, this was a very fun chapter for me to read, specifically because there is nobody in my house right now, so I just got to shout Nico's very angry words and sound goofy with Leo. I thought that was fun. Just like the, "Hey man, what's up?" Just like, "Yeah, I've been dead forever. How are you doing?" I thought that was fun. Um, I I thought this was a great chapter. I loved seeing Leo, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Don't forget to like, share to all of your Percy Jackson and Solangelo obsessed friends, comment, and subscribe, because if you like this, you'll probably like most of my other content. And I will see you next week for the second last chapter of Healing the Dark. even then, we're not going to be fully done with the series because there is a second book which has 34 chapters, so like 10 more chapters than this one. I will probably take a hiatus in between these two books, but not as long as the one I had in between. Not as long as the one I had in between. Gosh, I cannot remember the name of the other one. What was it? Safe House. The Safe House. So I'll probably have a hiatus, but it won't be as long as the one in between The Safe House and Healing the Dark. But I hope you guys enjoyed this chapter and have a great day, week, and all that stuff. Goodbye.